Hey everyone, welcome to a new lecture of the Explain series. And in this video, in this lecture, in this crash course, you can say we'll learn all about SOQL, SOQL, right? Now, before we jump into understanding what is SOQL, let's understand about the Salesforce database, right? Now, many of you may or may not know, but Salesforce databases are powered by Oracle, right? And as soon as we hear the name Oracle, the immediate keyword or the immediate name that comes to our minds is SQL, right? Which is the structured query language. Now, since our databases use Oracle and there are a lot of SQL or PostgreSQL languages involved that set up the entire query structure or the language for Salesforce, Salesforce has something that's called SOQL, an advanced version of SQL, which is based on the object level, which is why the name SOQL, Salesforce Object Query Language, which means you can query objects in Salesforce, right? The short code or the way you say it is SOQL, SOQL or SOQL, right? So you use SOQL to query data in your org and any data that exists, not metadata, remember, sometimes metadata too, but primarily data. So any data that exists can be queried using SOQL, right? And the clause that you start your SOQL query is the select clause, or rather the select statement, right? It is similar to how SQL does. And SOQL can be considered as SQL for Salesforce, right? So this is specifically for Salesforce. You cannot use SOQL everywhere, just how you use SQL almost everywhere as the backend query machine. But here, only with Salesforce, you can use Salesforce Object Query Language. That is the expanded version for SOQL, right? Now, why do we need SOQL? It's simple. You need to talk to the database, you need to get some information, you need to understand what kind of data exists and you want to filter them out, you want to play around with the data. So whenever you need to talk to the database and get what you need, you will use SOQL, right? Let's say you want to retrieve data from a single object or multiple objects that are related, you will use SOQL, right? Let's say you want to aggregate or summarize information. Let's say you want to count the total number of records that exist. Maybe you want to group information based on the gender of the person. Maybe you want to sort information based on the revenue or the salary of a person. All this aggregation and summarization can be done through SOQL, right? And lastly, you can retrieve all kinds of data types, and these data types include number, date, Boolean flags, checkbox, and all. It supports all your data types. Nothing is forbidden, and you have all data types from which you can retrieve your data from. All right, let's take a look at the query structure. Now, how does a SOQL query really look like? All right, so the first thing, it starts with the select clause, right? It starts with the select keyword, followed by you need to define all the fields that you want to query, right? Now, these fields are nothing but the list of fields, their API names, right? Let's say you want to query the amount, the stage, and the close date of an opportunity. You would keep them as comma separated. 3 fields will be here, and it would look like select. Account name, comma stage, comma close date, right? And then you have the from keyword, right? And right after from, you tell which object do you want to query. So this is the object API name. So I would say from opportunity, from account, from contact, right? So first you would define all the fields that you need. So you say you select all the fields from which object, you define the object here, and you put the where clause. Now this is a conditional clause. Your SOQL completes here. This is what is mandatory for SOQL. But if you want to add some filters with it, which is most of the times necessary, you add the where clause and you put a filter condition. So you might say that where annual revenue is greater than $50,000, right? Where gender is equal to female, right? Where age is greater than 30. So all those filters come here, right? So we'll talk a lot about how to structure them for real-time scenarios. We'll understand that right after this keynote, but this is how your structure would look like. And what is the mandatory clauses? It's the select and the from. So you need to define the list of fields that you want to query, and you need to tell Salesforce what object do you want to query. Until here, this is all mandatory. All right. And if you want to add some filters, you can use the where clause. That's how a basic query structure or a SOQL query looks like. Cool. Let's take, before we jump into doing live examples, we have a very cool tool that is embedded or integrated with Developer Console. You can build your queries out of the box, OOTBs out of the box, and you can create basic queries, right? How do we do that? Let's take a look at Salesforce. So I'm here on my Salesforce org, and let's go to Developer Console. All right. Now here we have something that's called file, and I say open. When I click on the open, if I click on open lightning resource, this opens up all my lightning components. If I click on open resource, that opens up a list. I have to find stuff from here. But when I click on open, I get a list of all the entities that are there present, and I can choose any one of them, right? So this is the easiest way to follow through or find a specific component. Now here, what we want to do is we want to query an object, right? What object we are looking for? Opportunity, let's say, just an example. So I'll click on objects, and I can either scroll down, or I can even say opportunity here. So when I filter it out, it gives me only the options that have the name. And if I see here, this is my opportunity object, and I'll just say double click. So this opens up the opportunity.obj, which is the object file of the opportunity object that we have in our system. And this gives us all the labels and the data type of the fields that are present in Salesforce for opportunity object, right? We see some custom fields, __c, __c, and we see a lot of standard fields. Now, if I open this section right here and open the query editor, I have a section wherein I can create my queries. Now it says enter SOQL or a SOQL query. SOQL is another crash course we'll be doing very soon, but right now let's focus on SOQL. So it says select columns from type where you can put some predicates or some checkpoints or some filter conditions, right? Similar to what we want to build. Now we will build SOQL queries on our own, but before that I wanted to talk about how you can build queries from the developer console. Basic queries. How do you do that? So all I have to do is I have to go to the fields. Let's say I want to fetch name. Where is the name? This is the name. And I'll just hold on control or command, control on a Mac, control on a Windows and command on my MacBook. So I'll say amount, probability, close date, and maybe the stage. Do we have something that's called a stage? Let's see, we don't have any stage. That's okay. Let's say we want the lead source and the type. All right, let's say these are all the fields that I want. So I've selected them, right? I selected them, and all I need to do is I need to click on this query button. And when I do that, you see the query is automatically built. You don't have to type it, it is automatically built, right? And what is the mandatory requirement? You have the select statement, you have the select clause and the from clause. You define what object, and you define the list of fields, comma separated with their API names. Now, if you wanted a custom field, let's take a look. Okay, this is behaving a bit differently. Let me open it again. Now let's say you want these fields along with a custom field. So I'll just go ahead and choose a custom field, right? And now if I click on query, so you see all these are standard fields followed by one custom field. No difference, just that, __c is also there, right? And now when I'm ready with my query, I can simply click on execute, and that will open all the records with these fields. See, ID, name, amount, probability, close date, lead source, type, tracking number. Makes sense? So that's the easiest way how you can execute a query using developer console out of the box. You don't have to write a single thing, but it will only create basic queries for you. You cannot put filters and all of it, it won't do everything for you, but yeah, basic starters it can do. All right, now let's understand how we can build queries. We'll start doing it on our own. We don't want to rely on developer console. So here onwards we'll try to write queries on our own, and that is basically what this crash course is about, right? What this video is about. We'll understand SOQL, we'll write them on our own, and we'll try to figure out how to work with them, right? Rule of thumb would be you have your own developer edition orgs. Go ahead and open it. Open the developer console. Try doing things similar to what I do on the screen. Try to explore parallelly. That will help you understand it a bit better, right? Because when you do it yourself, you see some errors coming in. That helps you. That makes you debug them, and that's how you learn faster. All right. So pause this here, and you can probably open a developer edition org, and you can start checking out things with standard objects similar to how I am doing. All right. So the first thing, how do you query standard fields? Now, I hope you understand what is standard versus custom, right? So query standard fields, you can query all accounts displaying the billing address. So billing address is a field that's available on the account object, right? How do we certify that? Let's check it. Let's close this, and let's close this, and let's go to file and say open account object. All right. I'll go to account and I'll say open. Now here I have billing address, right, which is a standard field. I don't see __c. So I'll start writing my query. What is our use case? Let's take a look at it again. Query all accounts. So we understand which object it is. It is the account object displaying the billing address. So the only information they want to be displayed is billing address. So what is our field? It will be billing address. All right. So what I'll do is I'll say how should it start? It should start by saying select, right? And then there should be from, and then there should be the object name. So select and from, what should be in between? It should be the name of the field. It is billing address. All right. And what is the from? It should be account object. Now, once I'm ready with my query, I'll say execute, and this should give me all the records. Now, this is showing you as an object because billing address is a compound field. right? You cannot just have directly query a query on a compound field, which is an address field. So instead of that, what if you wanted to break it down into individual components? So let's take a look at the object. We have something that's called billing address. Is basically a combination of all these fields, right? It's basically our address, right? Street, city, state, zip code, country, lat, long, and geocode accuracy, right? These three are a bit advanced, but yeah, most of the addresses contain this information, right? Now if I were to check this information, I could always go ahead and say billing street, comma, billing city, and let's say I just want the billing zip code. All right, it's not zip code, it should be the same name, so it should be billing postal code. All right, and now if I click on execute, this will give me the information with a breakdown. Right, I wanted to start off with the address field so that I could show you that that's an object, it's a compound field. So you have to break it down into individual fields when you're writing a SOQL. A compound field cannot be queried directly. You might be able to use it at some places, but if you want to take a look at the data, you have to use the individual fields. All right, so you see how you see the data of street, city, and postal code coming on your screen. That's the three fields we have queried from the account object. All right, now before we go ahead, let's say I miss something out here. Let's say my comma is away, comma is missed out, and I say execute. See what happens? It says there is an error at row 1, column 23. No such column, billing city, billing postal code. So what it is trying to do is, it is trying to understand what you've written and convert it into a query, right? But it sees something like this written together without a comma. So it won't understand that you have queried two fields. So it will throw a compilation error. So seeing this error, I can figure out, oh, okay, I made a mistake, a blunder. I'll just say comma, space, and I'll say execute. Right? This will open the same screen. What if I made a typo? Let's say I put city and I just put double Y's. If I say execute, this will say no such column, billing city with double Y's. So what I'll do is I'll try to figure out, okay, what's wrong? BI, there's double L, which is correct. Then I have, this is fine. I see, okay, there are double Y's. I'll say remove one Y and say execute. So it will open the same screen. All right, what if I just want the billing city and the postal code? I'll just get rid of this field and I'll say execute. So just these two fields are coming up here. It gives you a total count of total records that are there. If you want to query the ID, the record ID, you can always have ID here and it will execute and show you all the records. All right, what ID is this? This is the account ID. So if I were to open this particular record, let's say I want to open it here, I'll just copy and I'll paste it here. This should open my account, which has the billing city as Mountain View and no postal code. So let's see, this is my, a lot of stuff has come up. So let me close it. So I'll say details, and here if I see the billing address, you see, where's the billing address? It says Mountain View and billing postal code is not there. So if I just click on this pencil icon, so you see the postal code is empty, and here I see Mountain View, which is the billing view here, billing city here. That is the entire address because it is the combination of everything that's been entered here. So if you see, the Mountain View is the billing city and there's no postal code. All right, cool. Let's take a look at the next thing that we want to check. The next thing is, how do you query custom fields, right? So it says query all contacts displaying the number of locations. Now, if I were to go to developer console and close all of this, let's open contact object. So let's open contact object. And if I open contact object, do I have a custom field here? Let's see. I have two custom fields, right? I'll use one of these. So I'll say level. All right. How do I write my query? I'll say select, same thing, from, what is my object? It will be contact. And now what is the field I want to query? I want to show you a custom field. So I'll say level __ C and say execute. This will give me all the records with the level information. What if I also wanted to check out the languages, right? So I'll just say level, comma, languages and say execute. So this opens all the levels and languages for every record. If I want to check what is the contact name, I'll just put in name here and say execute. So it's giving me that for Jeff Glimpse, there's no level or language mentioned, but Rose Gonzalez, the level is primary and the language is English, and so on and so forth. Right? So nothing majorly different with standard versus custom. It's just that the field API name will change, and it is __ C for the custom ones. Standard ones have their simple API names, right? So that's how you simply query standard and custom fields. All good so far? All right, let's jump into some use cases now. So now we'll try to figure out use cases. We'll try to do the basic ones first, and things will start getting tougher and a bit complex as in when we progress into this particular video, right? And that's the best way to go. So first use case, find all contacts whose birthday is today, right? Now, understanding a question, the important part is that you understand it correctly so that you are able to do the syntax, or you are able to understand, okay, what do I have to query? Which object do I have to query? What filters do I have to put, right? That's the real deal. Once you understand what's written in this language English, it will be easier for you to segregate and make your SOQL query accordingly. So here, what's the object if I ask? It's contact object. Simple. What is the field that you want to check? It's not mentioned what field, but it says there's a filter criteria that birthday should be today, which is today's date, right? 3rd November. So I have to go to my developer console. Let's close all of these tabs. And let's say I just get the ID and name information from contact, because it's not mentioned what fields to query. I'll just put these two. Or let's say I add the birth date also. So birth date. So this is giving me all the records, right? Wherein people have birthday on 25/7, 21/1, 8/12, 24/6, and so on and so forth. Some don't have a birthday, looks like. All right. Now, we need to use the where clause for our filters. Now, what does our filter say? Our filter says birthday is today. All right. So my filter would be something like this. If I write it in English, where birth date is today's date. All right. So if I write this is how I would write it in English, right? But this won't work with Salesforce. The SOQL won't accept English. If I just say execute, it says unknown error parsing query. There's something wrong with it. So until here we were good, right? Because it showed us all the records, but where clause with this filter is incorrect. So you have to mention a way so that Salesforce understands that birthday is equal to today should be satisfied as a criteria. So for that, to figure out what is today's date, you have a function that's called today. And now if I execute this runs the query, and now it does not give me any record. No errors on the query, which means the query syntax is correct, no compilation error, but it does not return me anything. Let's go ahead and do something. Let's go to contacts and let's take a look at Jeff Klims. Let's go to details and let's see where is the birth date. The birth date is here, right? This guy did not have a birthday. Let's give him 1. So 3rd November, save. Now if I refresh my query, I can even click on refresh grid, or I can execute again. So when I click on execute again, okay, it did not work. Let's refresh. So now I see that Jeff Klims record is being shown up, and 3rd November is the birthday, which is today. So this is that function you can use whenever you have to query current date. And the same function is used as a function in formula functions and validation rules. You use the today function, right? So where birthday is equal to today is your filter, and it filters out your records based on whatever you have mentioned here in the where clause. Make sense? The simplest use case we started with. All right, let's take a look at the next use case. Use case 2, find all publicly owned accounts with hot rating. What's the object? The object is account. Let's go ahead and query account. So I'll say select from account. Have they told us what fields to query? They have not, but they have told that, you know, the rating should be hot and they should be publicly owned. So how do I understand publicly owned? Let's go to object, let's go to accounts, and let's open any record, right? So here you'll see publicly owned, which means you could probably take a look at ownership. It should be public ownership, right? Because this is public, which can kind of govern or, you know, state that, okay, the ownership is public, which means it is a publicly owned account. So the language is a bit different, but that is what it means. What is the field here? It is ownership field. All right. So I'll query ownership and rating. Let's say ownership, comma rating. Let's take a look at all the records that are there currently. This is all the records that we have. 16 records. Some have private ownership, some have public ownership, some have cold rating, some don't have a rating, some have hot, some have warm. Right? What is our filter criteria? The ownership should be public and the rating should be hot, right? So what do? I say where ownership equals public and rating equals hot. Make sense? Looks simple, very close to English, right? Now, if you notice, I had 2 criteria to put in, which is why I used the AND clause. Right? So you see where ownership is equal to public and rating is equal to hot. Once these 2 conditions meet, only those records should be filtered out and should be shown to the user. Now, which ones are these? This one would be the one, this one would be the other one, this one would be the third one. So ideally we should be receiving 3 records, right? Let's click on execute. So you see it says unknown error parsing query. This is very close to English, but when you are using any field and you're trying to compare values, you have to ensure that you surround them by escape quotes or apostrophes. Now these 2 values are string literals, so you'll have to put a single apostrophe for public and rating equal to hot. Now let's try to execute it. So this executes and this gives me 3 rows. That is what we anticipated, right? So if you were to write something like find me all the accounts where the name is Salesforce makes sense. So Salesforce makes sense is a string literal, right? So you have to embed it into a single quote or a apostrophe because these are string literals you are trying to compare with. All right, so you see where ownership is equal to public and rating equal to hot. So if this had to be read in English, this is basically all the accounts which are publicly owned and who have a hot rating. Make sense? Cool. Let's jump into the third use case. The third use case says find all qualified leads with source as web. What are the keywords? What is the object? The object is leads, correct. Now object is lead. Now source should be web and they should be qualified. So let's figure out what are these values or how do we find them. Let's go to leads. Let's open a record. And here in details, there's something that's called lead source. Where is lead source? This one right here. If I open this and I see there is a web option here, right? Now this might look very easy that I'm able to reach to the right field in like seconds. That's only because I know the objects very well and I know the fields that are there, and more importantly I have created the use cases, right? But when you are working for a company and when you have worked for some months or some years, you will also know the fields and the values that exist, and you will be able to figure out, okay, this is the field I need to query, that is the field I need to query, this is the filter I need to put. So not to worry about that. So here the first field filter would be that the lead source should be equal to web, right? What's the second thing? It says only give me qualified leads, right? Qualified leads means that you have a status field, right? The lead status field, right? We don't have a qualified field available, a qualified value here. So let me do something. Let's use working contacted as our value, right? Working contacted. All right. So let's go to developer console. And now what object do I want to query? I'll say select from lead. Now always remember, good practice is that all your clauses or all these keywords, right? They should always be capitalized. That kind of stay with you once you begin with this practice. If you write things like FROM and you do things like select with a capital T, like this does not look good, and this is not a good professional way to write SOQL. Always keep a single type of rule of thumb, and most of the times practice to keep these capitalized. And you'll see at wherever these are recognized, they're automatically color coded by understanding that it's a SOQL statement clause, right? So use select and from and where, everything as capital. So that's what I also follow. What is my object? It is lead. What are the fields? I'll just say lead source, name, status. I'm not sure if this field exists. Let's put it there, okay? Now where? What is our criteria? The first criteria is that the lead source should be web. So again, lead source should be equal to web. Now, will this work? No, I have to put a single quote, correct? Because I'm comparing with a string literal. And the lead should be working contacted. Now, what is the field? The field is status, right? So I'll say status equals working contacted. Again, did I make a mistake? Yes, I have to put this single quote here. Let's click on execute and see what's happening. Yeah, so the status field exists and there's no record here. So instead, what if I pick this record? Let's say I say cancel this. What is the value? It is closed converted. Let me copy this value. Let's go to developer console and let's put it here. I should get one record now. Let's execute and see. Yeah, one record is coming. This is for Bill Dardio Jr. Is this the same record? Bill Dardio Jr. No, this is Betty Bear, right? Why is it giving me some other name? Oh, that's because the lead source is different here. Our criteria is not matching for this record. It is partner referral, correct? Which is why it's not showing this record. Let's go to leads list view and let's see if there's any other record. I'll say all open leads. So here, I don't see that guy. Let's see. let me modify this list view filter, and let's say I want to see all leads, right? And now if I take a look at Bildadio Junior, this record right here, if I open this lead, we'll see that this is the only record which has closed not converted as the status, and the lead source is web. See? All right, let's go back and let's modify our Betty Bear record, let's say. And let's say this is lead source equal to web. Now how many records should come up? 2 records should come up. Let's go back to developer console and refresh our grid. We see Betty Bear and Bildadio now. All right, so you are good with the AND clause, I believe, and you're good with putting string literals for comparison, and you are good with a basic filter, a basic where clause filter, right? All right, let's go to the next use case. What is our fourth use case? The fourth use case says find all contacts whose name is Louis. Let's go to contacts first of all, and let's take a look at all the records that we have. Do we have any Louis already? Let's see. Looks like we don't, right? So let's pick up a name that is already here. So let's say we want to look for Jane, right? Whose name is Jane, right? Let's go to the developer console. What is our object? Contact, correct. So select ID, comma name, comma birth date from contact, where, what is our question? Let's take a look at it again. Whose name is Jane? Let's say this is Jane. Okay, find all contacts whose name is Jane. So I'll just go ahead and say name, where name is equal to Jane. Again, do I need a single quote? Yes, I do. So I'll say single quote execute. So it says unknown error. What is my error? I was in hurry, so I forgot to mention the object name. It should be from contact. Execute. No records, right? Now, why is that there are no records? Because this query is trying to figure out all the contact records who have the name exactly Jane. That's the string we are comparing it with, right? If I go to contacts, I see Jane, but it is not just Jane, it is Jane Grey. So if I were to search for a name, I have to search it properly. It would be Jane Grey. Only then it would show the records, or else it would not, right? If you just type in Grey or just type in Jane, that would not give you the record just because the name is there. It's a part of it. When you're using the equal to operator, it compares the exact string. Let's see one thing. What if I use a different casing, and what is here? We see J and G is capital. What will happen? Let's see. If I say execute, I still get the record, which means it is not case sensitive. But if I go ahead and give one extra letter or just remove a space and say execute, the record goes away. It does the exact matching, but it does not match the case. All right. So if I search for Jack Rogers, right? If I just type in Jack, it won't give me the record. Let's say if I just say Jack Rogers, if I just say Jack and say execute, it does not give me the record. What if I say Jack Rogers without a space, say execute, still does not give me the record. But what if I put a space here and I get the exact name and I see the record? All right. What if J is not capitalized? Let's say execute, I still see the record. What if J is capitalized and R is not? It still gives me the result. What does that conclude? That means that the comparison is exact, but it does not consider the case. Sounds good? So name is basically nothing but a combination of 3 things. If I click on the new button here, 3 or rather 4 things, right? Let's see, 3 things. Salutation, first name and last name. So what I was trying to figure out is that I wanted to compare the name attribute, but what if I wanted to check whether the first name is Gray or the first name is Jane? I could do that. So if I say name is equal to Jane and say execute, it won't return me any records. But if I say where first name is equal to Jane, it will return me this record, right? What if I say and last name, that's the other attribute, is equal to Gray? Will it still return this record? Yes, it will, because it still matches the criteria. Now this is individual fields, right? And they together formulate the name field. But when I want to query and check the name field in my condition, the field value should also contain the entire value. Only then it will come up, or else it will not. Make sense? Cool. Let me get rid of all these tabs and let's start fresh. That was this use case. Let's take a look at our next use case. Use case 5. Find all accounts whose industry is banking. Let's go to accounts. Let's open a record. Let's go to details. And is there an industry field? Industry field. Yes, industry. And they are asking whether the industry is banking, this value right here. Simple. Let's go ahead and say select id comma name from account, where what should be my field? It is industry equals banking, single quotes. Is there any issue with this line? There is an issue. See, there's a red line here. Let me still execute it. Let's say execute, and it says that error at line row 1 column 36, no such column industry. So I'll go back to my column and see, oh okay, I made a typo. I'll come back and say execute. There are no records. All right, let's search for industry is equal to apparel. One record, Burlington Textiles. What is Gene Point? Gene Point account has what industry? Biotechnology. Let's go and type biotechnology here. Let's say execute. So you see Gene Point is coming up. Now what if I typed biotechnology, something like this? Let's say execute. It's still giving me the record, right? So we have certified that, you know, case sensitivity does not matter, but the exact string should be there. What if I put a space here? Will it still show me the result? It will not. So you see that space adds an extra character and that exact matching goes away. All right. So biotechnology is what we compared and we are getting the result with the exact match. Cool. That's how your equal to operator works when you're trying to compare things. It will try to see the exact match. It will not budge just because you made a mistake. Cool. So we covered 5 simple use cases. What were those? These were the ones, right? Pretty straightforward ones, nothing fancy, but we have started to understand, okay, this is how we need to write a SOQL. This is how a basic where clause filter would work. This is how I would put a string literal because I'm comparing with a text. This is why I would use a equal to sign because I want an exact matching. And it's okay if I don't ensure that I match the case because it is case insensitive. All right, and understand the question. I'll understand the question properly by just reading and figuring out what are the fields they need, what is the filter they need, and what is the object they need. Cool. So far so good. All right, let's move on to the next section. What is that? That is operators in SOQL. We'll take a look at some specific operators. All right. Operators in SOQL. One of the operators that we took a look at was the equal to sign, right? And we also took a look at the AND operator, wherein we wanted to club one or more or 2 or more filters, right? Industry is banking and ownership is public, right? In those cases, we use the AND operator. Now let's take a look at some intermediate level operators. Let's take a look at the first one. The first one is the OR operator. Now the use case here says find all accounts whose industry is either banking or ownership is private, right? If this were an AND condition, this keyword would be AND here, as simple as that. And that's how you would know that you have to go for an AND clause. But this says OR here, which means you need to figure out all the account records who either have the industry banking or their ownership is private. All right, let's try to figure out the records. Let's go to the query and let's type in select ID, comma name, comma ownership, comma industry. Are these the 2 fields, industry and ownership, right? So I want to see all the records. I see ownership is here and industry is here. What is our use case? Industry should be banking and ownership should be private. All right. So ownership is private here. Industry is biotechnology. Ownership is private here. Industry is consulting. And ownership is private here. Industry is technology. Is there any record with the industry banking? No, right? Let's do something. Let's get this record right here, or rather this record, and I'll say banking. And I'll save row. All right. Now we have some records which have the ownership private and we have one record which has the industry banking. Let's get this record also, the industry banking. Let's say save. Now let's go back to our question. And this says you need to find all accounts whose industry is banking or ownership is private, right? The OR clause is here. Now take a look at this table and figure out and keep it in your mind how many records should come up once we put this SOQL into picture, right? Think about how many records should come up. Just do a count based on what you see, right? So according to me, this should be one record that should come up. This is the second record. This is the third record. This is the fourth record and this is the fifth record. 5 records should show up. Why? Because either their ownership is private or their industry is banking. One of the conditions is satisfying for these 5 records, correct? I hope you did the same calculation and your count is also 5. Now let's put our clauses. I'll say where industry equals banking. Let me put the first clause and say execute. How many records show up? 2 records, right? And what's my second condition? My second condition is ownership equals private. And here in between, I will put an put a or clause. I'll say execute, and I see those 5 records that I planned. I understood that these should come up are the ones showing up on the screen. All right. Now let's say this record right here is also private in ownership, and I say save rows. Now how many records should show up if I run this again? If I say execute, still the same number of records will show up. Either this or this should be true. If both are true, still it will show the record, correct? Cool. Now understand what difference would it make if instead of an or clause I would use the and clause. Out of all these records, how many records would show up? Take a look and understand. Only 1 record. Why? Because ownership is private and industry is banking. Both conditions meet only for 1 record in this slot, and that's this record right here. If I click on execute, only sample account for entitlements is coming. And if I say or, the ones satisfying any one of the conditions are showing up. Understand the difference between and or? Cool. Let's close all these tabs and let's take a look at our next parameter. Before that, what if you add 3 conditions with or? Either the industry is banking, or the ownership is private, or the ownership is public. Let's go ahead and try that out. Or instead of ownership, let me figure out one more field. Type. This is the account object. Let's say the type should be prospect, or the ownership should be private, or the industry should be banking. All right, let's type that out. So here we already have 2 conditions. I would say or type equals prospect. As simple as that. 3 conditions segregated by an or clause. Execute. So you see I'm seeing all these 5 records. Now looks like none of the records have the type as prospect. Let me get this here and let's see what are the values. So type is not prospect for any one of them, but for these records, one of these conditions is matching, right? Let's do something. Let's get rid of this entire clause and let's give 1 record the type equal to prospect. Let's execute this, and here type, I'll just give this guy prospect. All right, I'm just modifying records so that we can see the results accordingly. Now if I put my filter, how many records should I get? All those records along with the S4 record which has the type prospect, right? That did not refresh, so I just refreshed it. Cool, good with the or operator. What if you wanted to check ownership is private and industry is banking and type is prospect? You would put an and condition in between. All right, and that would give you only the record which has the combination of all 3, not any one of them. That's the difference between and or. That was our first operator. Let's take a look at our second operator, which is in. Okay, now here find all accounts whose industry is banking, technology or business. Now here again you see the or clause, right? You could very well think that you want to show all the accounts whose industry is banking or technology or business, correct? Now if I were to tell you, don't think about this clause here, the operator here, and if you just took a look at this record and based on what you learned, what would you do? You would go ahead and write a query that would look like this. From account where industry is equal to banking or industry is equal to, what are the 3 values? Technology and business. So I'll say technology or industry equal to business. And I would say execute. So this gives me these 3 records where the industry is matching either banking or technology. It looks like no one has the industry business, but this is how you would write it, right? Now, if you notice your query or your filter has only 1 field and you are comparing it with different values. So instead of using an equal to operator and using or clause multiple times, what if you could club them together? That's where in operator comes in. So let me get rid of this section. What I would write here, I would say where industry, the field name, I would write in, and here within single quotes, comma separated, I would put the values. I would say technology, I would say business, and I would say banking. The order does not matter, okay? And since these are multiple values, they have to be given a bracket so that they can be clubbed together. Now, what does this read like? Instead of this section right here, using multiple OR clauses, you simply say that just check this field and do my records contain any of the one values which are in this particular list. Technology, business, or banking, sorry. Let's click on execute, and you see all the three same records, because the condition, the writing of the query is different, but the work it does behind the scenes is same. What if you wanted to put prospect? Oh, prospect is type, right? It is not industry. Let's say agriculture. And if I say execute, so you see one more record showed up, the third record, new company PV. What is the advantage of using in? You don't have to write industry equal to or every time. You just have to mention the keywords, right? So if in case there is a single field and you want to check multiple values from that one field, you can use the in operator. That's when you would want to use it. All right. Now what if I told you query all the accounts where industry is among these fields or the type is among two more fields? So I would just say or type in. Now there were two more fields, right? So I'll say prospect, I'll say web, let's say, okay, and I'll say execute. So you see all these records where the type is prospect, and now why did this record show up? Because there is an or condition, and for this particular condition the type is prospect, which matches from one of these two values, and for the other guys you have industry, which matches the value. Okay, now what if I said type in prospect or technology partner, right? In this case I would still see the same set of records, because this guy right here has technology partner, which satisfies this condition, but it also satisfies this guy right here, right? Now what if I told you that the industry should be any one of technology, business, banking, agriculture, and the type should be one of prospect and technology partner? In that case you would switch this or to an and operator, and now as you might think, only this record would show up, only one record, because satisfies both conditions in the in operator for both industry and type. Cool. The combinations and the different ways of understanding a query sound good, and the operator is clear. All right, so we have taken a look at or and we have taken a look at in. Now let's take a look at an interesting one, that is like. All right, so as you understand the like keyword kind of tells you similar to, right? Like, the word like is similar to, right? So the use case says show me all cases where subject starts with follow. Let's take a look at a case record to understand what is the question trying to say. Let's go to more. I have cases here, and let's see. There's a subject field, right? And if I open a subject, if I open a case, and if I go to the fields here, where is the subject? The subject should be somewhere here down below. If I click on edit, I can just say urgent subject, urgent case. Look at it. Now this could be the subject of a case, right? But now here the question says you need to find all cases where the subject starts with follow. Now it's not equal to where name is Jane Grey. No, it is not that. It says where the name starts with Jane, or maybe the name starts with a J. Similar to that, show all cases where subject starts with a follow, the keyword follow, which means if I were to write this subject here, follow up, talking to you, this would be the contestants of the records that would be returned, because it starts with the keyword follow. That is our question. If I take a look at all the cases, let's take a look at all the cases, all open cases maybe. Out of this, only this guy should show up as the returned query result, because the subject starts with a keyword follow. How do we write it in the query? So we go to query editor. Now this time, what is our field? I'll say ID comma subject from which object? Case object. Yes. Where? Now what is my where clause? It will be subject is like, not really is like, subject starts with follow. Now this follow is a text, so I'll put it in a quote. Now this is how you would closely represent your query in English, but starts with is not allowed in Salesforce query, right? If I say execute, it will say unknown error. So this point is fine, where clause is fine, field name is fine, text is fine, but starts with will not work. So I have to say where subject like and then followed by what I want to compare it with. Now understand this carefully. If I execute it now, I don't get any records. Why? Because again, like is trying to figure out the exact string. It is not seeing that it starts with or ends with. You have to put something more into this query to make Salesforce understand that. So right now our cases have follow up, talking to you, design issues, maintenance guidelines, seeking guidance. But is there something that is exactly like follow? No, there is. It looks like follow, but it has a lot of stuff there also after follow, right? If I were to modify this and I say follow here and I say save, now this record right here would show up in my query because this is exactly like follow. Refresh grid, I see one record. But for us to be able to see this record also, we have to tell Salesforce that after the follow there might be some words, right? So to ensure that works, we have to put something that's called a modulo sign. This modulo sign tells Salesforce that it should start with follow, but it can have some characters after follow also. Now when I click on execute again, I see two records, and you see now follow up talking to you also shows up. All right. Now, what if you had something like this? You should follow this. Now what would my query return? Let's click on execute. Let's refresh the grid. It is only showing my follow up talking to you. The record that I just modified went away. Why? Because now it does not start with follow. It has something before it also. So to tell Salesforce that, find me anything that has the keyword follow in it, I would put a modulo sign in the starting also. Now if I say execute, this gives me two records. So follow is somewhere in between, follow is here in the start. But if you want to tell them it starts with, which is our use case or which is our question, starts with, right? So we cannot put the modulo sign in the starting. We have to say follow because it should start with the follow keyword. Followed by it can be anything. So I'll just put a modulo sign after the follow keyword. When I execute, I just get this record, which is correct. All right. Cool. Let's understand one more thing. What if I wanted to tell you that the use case is followed, save? What if I tell you that find me all the cases where the subject starts with follow, followed by there should only be two characters after the keyword follow? How would you do that? So you would go to developer console, and instead of the modulo sign, you can use another reserved character, that is underscore. This underscore represents one character or one space. And now what we want to do is we want to figure out two spaces, right? So I'll say one more underscore and I'll say execute. This will give me only the subject. See, because it has just two characters. So this underscore represents one character each. Make sense? Now what if I told you that the case should have the keyword follow in it, but it should have only one alphabet after the keyword follow and one alphabet before, which means if you had something like this, let's say I put A here and I put B here, and this is what I'm seeking for. Let's say there should be a keyword follow in somewhere there. It might start with it, it might end with it, but it should have one character before it and one character after it. How do you figure it out? You say one underscore in the starting, follow, and then one underscore at the end. If I execute, this gives me A follow B. It matches the exact number of characters. What if I now do this? Let's say I put double A here and I try to save it. Will it still return my record? Let's see. If I refresh the script, the record goes away, because the exact matching of one character does not work now. It is not same. It has two characters now. And now if I say execute, it will give me the record again. So you understand how underscore works as a single character matching and how a percentage sign or a modulo sign is different. It says it can have 0 or more. Like if I just say like modulo follow on both ends, and if I just say follow, right? So you don't see any extra characters apart from follow in this particular record, correct? Now even if I put modulo at both ends, I'll still get the record. If I refresh it, see, follow is coming up. Modulo is 0 or more, underscore is exactly the number of underscores given. So if I say follow underscore 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 underscore, that means your field value should have follow followed by 4 characters exactly. Only then it will return the record, or else it will not. Good with the like keyword. Where is this handy? Wherever you want to see, okay, sounds like, looks like, starts with, ends with, you can use like keyword for those scenarios. All right, so that was our like operator. Interesting operator, right? So let's take a look at our next operator, which is order by. Now you might want to take a look at records. Let's quickly take a look at all our cases, or instead, yeah, let's take a look at all our cases. It should be case object. These are all our cases, right? What if I wanted to see them alphabetically sorted by their subject? I can click on this link right here. But what if you wanted to use this order by clause in your Salesforce Apex code for some purpose, some business region? You want only to see the first 5 records which are in the cases, and they should be alphabetically sorted by their subject name. How would you do that? You would use the order by clause. So order by followed by the field that you want to order it by. So subject is the field that we want to order it by. If I say execute, this is order by subject. If I just change this, and if I say refresh grid and say execute again, it's not executing, looks like. Let me close this. Let's close all the tabs and let's execute now. So you see it starts with C. All right. What if you wanted to descending sort it? You just have to put one keyword after your field, and that is called DESC, similar to SQL. Order by field name, desk. The desk is for descending order. Now it starts with C, now it will start with S. Let's go back on top, say execute, and now it starts with S. Descending sorted. All right, what is our actual use case in order by? Display all the opportunities sorted by their highest revenue first. Highest revenue first means a descending sorting based on the revenue, correct? Let's go and type in the query, select ID, comma name, comma annual revenue. I believe this is the field, maybe, let's see, or it is amount, maybe. Let's say amount from opportunity. Let's execute. So you see all the amount is coming up now, right? Now they want us to show them all the opportunities sorted by the highest revenue first. So the guy who has the highest revenue or highest amount should show up first. So I'll say order by amount. If I just go ahead and execute now, it will start with the lowest one. So I want to say descending, so that it sorts it with the highest one first. So United Oil Refinery Generators has the highest amount in all the opportunities. Okay, so order by, and if you want to keep it in ascending, you don't put anything, but if you want to say descending, you have to put a keyword after your field name, and that is called desk, DESC. That's short for descending. Cool. Let's take a look at our next operator, which is the limit operator. Now, what if you wanted to just see the first 10 records? What if you wanted to see the first 50 records? You might have 5,000 records, but you just want to see the first 50 records. How do you ensure that? By putting a limit to the query, to the returns that happen. So I'll say select ID, comma name from opportunity, limit 5. That will give me only 5 records. See, only 5 records. If I say 15, it will give me 15 records. If I say 10, it will give me 10 records. Cool. What is our use case here? It says display 10 opportunities where the close date is in the past. Now understand the question. What is the object? Opportunity object. Is there a filter? Yes, it says the close date should be in the past. And how many records? 10 records. So I have to use the limit operator also. So I'll say select ID, comma name from opportunity. First of all, I'll put my limit, okay? Simple thing. So I'll put it limit 10. I want to check the close date, so let me query the close date. Let's say execute. So this will give me 10 records. But now here, if you see, this is 31/8, 22/6, 18/5, 14/8, all are in the past automatically, right? But what if I want to put, let's say I want to see 100 records, execute. Do I see anything that's in the future? No, it's not, right? So let's modify some of them. Let's say this is 12. This is 11. and I save these rows. So 2 guys are from the future, 22nd November and 31st December, right? Now I'll put limit 10 again, execute, and I only want to see those records where close date is in the past. So where close date, so this should be my filter, and always remember limit is the last thing that is in your query, where clause will be in between. So where close date, now what do I want to write in English? I would say is in the past. How do I convert it into Salesforce language? I'll say, we learned today, right, that today represents today's date. Now if I say close date is less than today, it will always be in the past. Yesterday, day before yesterday, the day before yesterday, all those dates will be covered if I just say less than today, right? So that's how you formulate your where clause, and you put a limit clause and let's say execute. This will return only those records which have closed date in the past, and it will only return 10 records because we put a limit. Cool. What if you wanted to order them by the name? What if you wanted to do that? It is automatically ordered by name. No, it is not. G is here and E is here, right? So if I wanted to order it also, I would have to put the order by here. Order by is the second last keyword. So I'll say order by name. And now if I say execute, you see it starts with B and then it goes till G, and it gives me only 10 records based on the name. All right. So you see, select from where order by limit. This is the order. If you just say limit 10 here and you try to write it, it will say unknown error parsing query, because the order of which the query should be written, it is incorrect. So where will be here, order will be here, and then limit will be at the end. If you don't have a where clause, fine, order by will be the second last one, limit would be the last one. If you don't have an order by, fine, limit would be the last one. But you cannot put where clause here. You cannot put order by here. You cannot do that. The sequence has to be maintained. It will be where order by limit. Cool. All right, let's take a look at our next use case. Not the use case, let's take a look at our next operator. Now the next operator is offset. What are we seeing here? If I were to say command Z, command Z, command Z, command Z. Yeah, so if I were to see this records, right? And if I say limit 15. So you see it starts with Burlington, it ends with Grand Hotels SLA. Now what if I told you, I don't want to see the first 10 records, I want to see the records following, I want to see 5 records after the first 10 records, which means I want to see these 5 records. How do I do that in SQL? I use offset and limit, and similarly in SOQL also you can use offset and limit. So before going to limit, I will just show you offset. Now let's take a look at this use case, and then we'll do the use case that is given in the question, right? I want to just see these 5 records, So right now where close date is less than today is being satisfied, and it is ordered by name followed by limit 15. But I don't want to see limit 15. I want to see limit 5, and I want to see records starting at this point, not at this point. So I'll say limit 5 offset 10. Let's click on execute. So you see it starts with Grand Hotels and it reaches the Grand Hotels SLA. Offset means remove the starting point as 0 or 1 and take it to that point. The pointer will point at the 10th record and start from there. What if I said 15 here? It will start from after Grand Hotels SLA, and then it will give me the next 5 records. See, after Grand Hotels SLA, you have Jackson Controls till United Oil installations. Let's say I wanted to see 10 records, I'll say limit 10. So from Jackson to United Oil Refineries. What if I said from 21, I want to see the next 10 records. So I'll say from United Oil Office to University of AZ. So limit basically shows you the number of records that you have, and offset is basically your starting point. If you don't define an offset, it starts from 0 or 1, right? The starting point. But if you define an offset point, let's say you know that your first record will always be a dummy record. So I'll just say offset 1. So Burlington will go away, it will start from Dickinson. Let's say offset 2, it will start from Edge Emergency. The first 2 records will be ditched away, and it will start counting 10 from the second record. That is what offset means. Make sense? Let's take a look at the real question now. So display all accounts in ascending order of their name. Let's do it part by part. Display all accounts. So I'll just go ahead and say select ID, name from accounts. All right, and in ascending order of their name, so I can just use what clause? Order by clause. What field should be used? name, because order by name. And since it is ascending, I don't need to write it explicitly, it will automatically be ascending. Execute. It should not be accounts, it should be account. Excitement. Alright, so it starts with B and ends with U. Everything is ascending in order. What's the next part? Excluding the first 5 records. So they want to see us show only the records which are these records. Okay, the first 5 records, right? So these records. They don't want to see anything from Burlington Textiles to Gene Point. So what do? We say offset order by name offset 5. And if I execute this right here, it starts from Grand Hotels. So they don't see records from Burlington to Gene Point. Alright, and if you notice, offset is the very last thing that comes here. Where would limit be placed? Limit would be here. If I wanted to see only 5 records starting from the 5th position, which means from Grand Hotels to Salesforce makes sense, I would say limit 5, offset 5. Execute. This will give me from Grand Hotels to Salesforce makes sense. Alright, so where will offset come in handy? Before that, see, offset is the last keyword. Now if I take you through all the things, so where clause will come here, order by will come here, followed by limit, and then followed by offset. Okay, you cannot have offset before and then limit after. Let's see if I do that. What does it say? It says unknown error. So you have to follow the sequence always. Execute. Okay, this is because where clause is not defined. Alright. Now, where would offset come in handy? If you want to fetch a certain number of records. It does not come in handy when you are like, I want records from Grand Hotels to Salesforce makes sense. No. When you are actually processing data, you don't know what is the 5th record, what is the 50th record, what is the 500th record, right? But you want to only fetch specific set of records. Let's say you just want to fetch 25 records starting from the 25th number. I mean, that could be a use case, right? In that case, you would use a combination of limit and offset. All right. So that's our operator offset. Let's take a look at our next operator, which is called count. So count the number of cases present in the org, right? I told you in the very beginning, SOQL can be used to aggregate and summarize information, right? If I wanted to count how many records are there, I would say select count from case. And that's how you would simply count your records. It's telling you 28 records are there. Total rows are 28. And you can put a field inside this. I can say count IDs. It will say the count of ID is 28. I can say count names. A name won't be here. Let's say subject. It will give 28 records. So it tells you how many records exist. So you can use the count function. It can be called a function because it has brackets, or you can consider this as an operator. Okay. So this will give you an aggregation, the summation, right? What are the total number of records that are in the system? So if you want to count that, you can count it. Can you put a where clause here? Let's see. If I say where subject like follow, what is the count it will give? It will give 2 count. So it tells you that there are 2 cases which have the subject that have the keyword follow in it. All right. Now what if I want to say that only find me the number of subjects that have the subject that start with follow. So I'll remove the modulo sign from here because I want to see start with follow. I'll keep the modulo sign at the end because it might end up with anything. Let's click on execute. It gives me 2 records still. All right. What if I wanted to query the subject field here? Can I do that? Let's see. Execute. It says that the field must be grouped or aggregated. So you cannot really put anything here if you have not aggregated it. So count will be independent. You cannot put it here. If you have to put a field, we will see that in a very soon. We'll see that very soon. So you see this error that came up. It says that the field must be grouped or aggregated subject. So subject cannot be independently left there and you cannot query it here. Okay, because you're actually counting stuff, right? So if you're counting, how do you show individual information? If you're aggregating, how do you show individual information? That's the conflict Salesforce is facing. But there's a way to see fields alongside it. We'll see how to do that very soon. All right, so that is your count function. So count the number of cases present in the org, we did that. The very next is the one which is the solution to the problem that we just saw, which is the group by operator, right? Group by is again another clause similar to how we use where clause or order by clause, select clause. You have group by. Group by, as the name suggests, you can group information based on a specific field or a parameter, right? So our question is display the number of leads under each lead status. So you see, the previous question was display the number of leads. So what would we do as part of the previous question? We would say select count ID from lead. This was our previous question, right? Count. So it says there are 22 leads in the system, but they also want to see under which lead status which records are present, right? So they just don't want to see the total number of leads. They want to see a bifurcation based on the lead status. And that bifurcation, that segregation, that summarization can be done by group by clause, and followed by the group by you write the field name. So it will be status. So group by status, it says that there are 2 records with a specific status, there are 11 with another status, there are 5 with another, and 4 with another. Now how do we know which status are those? Now since I have used the group by function, I can put a field here and I can put the status field, and I can say, now it will not give me the error that it has to be aggregated, because we have grouped information based on status, and that is the field I'm using here in the select clause. I'll say execute, and you see open not contacted there are 2, closed converted are 4, closed not converted at 5, and working contacted are 11. Now you can see the bifurcation of your entire lead records with the count information of individual lead states. Make sense? So this is how you can use the group by clause when you are aggregating and you want to see the summarization based on individual values of a field. All right. That was a group by clause. Now where does group by come? It comes towards the end, but let's say I want to ask you, show me all the leads, show me all the count of leads based on their status, but the status should only be 2 of them. Either it should be working contacted or closed converted. So I don't want to see open not contacted, and I don't want to see closed not converted. So working contacted should be the one, and closed converted, which means I have to put a where clause for a filter. So I'll put where clause here. I'll say status. Now there are 2 values. Will you use or will you use in? You will use in, right? So I'll put in, I'll say single quotes, working contacted. Now there's a space in between, so let me just add those spaces. Working contacted, and then the second value is closed converted. So I just want to see these 2 values, correct? And then followed by group by status. See, I made a mistake of putting them in small case. It should always be capital. Where status in, working contacted, closed converted, group by the status value. Now let's click on execute and see what happens. I just see 2 rows, and I see the count information only of the filtered records that I wanted to see, which also kind of says that where clause comes before, group by comes after, and they can be used together. Correct? So you can have some filters and you can still group your information. You can still summarize your information. All right. I'll get rid of this where clause for now, and let's take a look at our next use case. Our next clause or next operator is having clause. Having clause does not work independently, just how we have seen these guys, right? These guys worked all independently, but having always comes after the group by, and it cannot be independent. All right. So display accounts with duplicate names. This is the question. Before jumping into this question, let's understand how having works. So we are here. Let's execute this. So you see, for each status, you have some count, right? Now, based on your group by information, you can put a having clause after the group by. You cannot have this independently without the group by. You have to have the group by to use having. I want to only find records where the count is greater than 2. So I only want to see these 3 records, basically. I don't want to see open not contacted, because I am only interested in the count of those states which have more than two records. So I'll say group by status having count of ID greater than 2. So you see what I did? I said query me all the lead records, count the number of IDs they have, group them by their status, and only bring those which have the count of ID, this value greater than 2. Execute. This only shows me 11, 4 and 5. Make sense? What if I wanted to write just group by just having? If I do this, let's see execute. It says unknown error. It says unknown error. I have to use it with the group by clause. I cannot use it independently. Having is dependent on the group by clause. Okay, so this is what it returns. Now back to our question. This is a tricky one. What is our question? It says display accounts with duplicate names. What duplicate names? Duplicate names with there might be more than one record with the same name, right? The other way to write this is find all accounts which have same name, right? Not all accounts which have same name, but which have names similar to other accounts. So it could be like, Jane. Let me not disrupt my PPT. Let's leave it here. So the use case could be, there could be a Jane Grey, there could be another Jane Grey, right? There could be Roger Thomas, there could be another Roger Thomas, right? There could be one Kinjal, there could be one Himanshu, right? These guys will not show up in my query. I only want to see these records, Roger Thomas and Jane Grey, those who have duplicates. So how do I do that? First of all, let's figure out ID, name from account. Execute. Let me bifurcate this to first name and last name. First name, last name. And let's do contacts because contact are real people. So let's use contact for now. So I'll say first name, last name from contact. So Devesh Bijja, Tom Ripley, Liz D. Cruz. Are there any names that are same? We have to figure that out. We have to find that out. Okay. So what I can do is I can first of all count first name from contact, group by first name. Execute. This says select count first name. Oh, it says that should not be aggregated. So I cannot aggregate. I'll say ID and say execute. So I'm grouping my stuff by first name and I'm just counting the IDs. And if you notice, all the values are 1, which means there are no duplicates really. I have to go back and just modify a record just to show you. So if I go here and I say Jeff and I modify this Jeff guy into Jane Glimpse, all right, and say save. And now if I say first name, count of ID, execute, it shows all the records are 1 except for one, which is Jane right here. See? Now, if I just take a look at this query, I can easily say that only Jane is the name that has a duplicate in the system, correct? Because the count says 2, which means there exists 2 IDs which have the same first name. That is what the group by clause is doing, right? But if I only wanted to figure out only the ones that have duplicates, I have to use the having clause. So I'll say having count of ID greater than 1. Greater than 1 means at least 2, and at least 2 means a duplicate, right? I'll say execute and I'll only get Jane. Now this solves my question. I am seeing all the accounts which have duplicate names and only this is the account, or rather this is the first name that has a duplicate. All right. Can I query the ID field here? Let's see. I will not be able to, because it has to be the grouped or aggregated. Why was I able to use the first name? Because I am grouping it by first name. Okay, let's take a look at one more thing before we close our operator session, right? After this, we don't have operators directly. So I'll show you one more thing. Let me execute. So you see all the names, first name, right? But what if I wanted to say a combination of first name and last name? I wanted to group information by first name and last name and see any duplicates exist or not. So you would say that you can simply use name, right? That's one way to go about it, and that's the actual way to go about it. So this will be like this. All the names have not been repeated twice. There might be a Jane Grey and Glimpse, but they have different names altogether. The first name might be same, but the name in its entirety is different for them. Correct? So let's say I go ahead and change Jane Glimpse to Jane Grey and say save. Now if I execute this, you must agree that these two will come as 2. I'll say refresh grid, and now Jane Grey is coming with 2 because same name has 2, and I can just simply say group by name having count of ID greater than 1. So only Jane Grey is showing in my result. Cool. What if I now told you I want to find duplicates if the first name, last name, and the email, these 3 things are same? How do I do that? So I want to check name and email also. So I have to group my information based on my next parameter. So you see, I can have more than one parameters in my group by clause. So I can say group by name, email. So now I can just say execute. So I'll see information grouped by name and email. And see, the 2 has gone away because now Jane Grey, this guy right here and this guy right here, or girl, has different email IDs. How do we certify? Because see, we have put name and email here. I can use email in my query. I'll say email. And let's see if emails are different for Jane Grey 1 and Jane Grey 2. This one is this value right here and this is this value right here. And now if I copy this value and I change it here and I say save rows, oh, I cannot save it because it is a grouped query. I have to create a separate query and save it here, or else I can go to the record here and I can just modify this. So instead of, let me just put this value in this record. Alright, now if I refresh my grid, what will happen is I'll again get Jane Grey 2 because name and email grouped information has a duplicate. Right? It's not just one field. If you want multiple fields to check duplicates, you can group them by using a comma separator. You can use group by followed by as many fields that you want to group your information. Name, birth date, email. So that's a good way to find duplicates. Now let's say if I refresh grid, what happens? I see Jane Grey with this email ID is 2, and I can find that there is only one record in the system which has a duplicate. Because the name and the email matches, I can say that that's a duplicate. I'll say count ID greater than 1. So I have figured out the account which has a duplicate in the system. So what I'll do is I'll get rid of one account and I'll keep one account. Cool. Good with having clause, good with group by clause, good with using multiple fields in the group by clause. Understood where having will come. It will not come independently. It will come after the group by clause. Where will the where clause be? It will be somewhere here. Where will the order clause be? It will be order by here. Limit here. Offset here. This is the sequence. Select from where, group by, having, order by, limit, offset. All of these guys are non-mandatory. The only things mandatory are select and from, and everything else only comes in when you want to use it. All right. Cool. That completes the operator section. What all did we cover? Or, in, like, order by, limit, offset, count, group by, having, and next we'll move on to our next section. That is using null inquiries. So now that we have understood all the operators, right? We have understood all the clauses. Let's look at how do you handle null scenarios in Salesforce SOQL, right? So we'll figure out how to use null in queries and where can they be really used. Null and not null checks are, believe me, the most important checks that you'll ever put in your Apex code, in your SOQL queries, and that will filter out a lot of data. It will filter out a lot of bad data. It will filter out a lot of records that are not needed for your transaction. So it's important to understand how you process null and not null records. All right. So let's take a look at our first use case. Find all accounts where number of employees are not null. So it kind of means that, you know, only those accounts should show up which have a value on the number of employees field. All right. So a practical use case would be, let's say there are companies that are registered under you, but the number of employees is blank. They might be test or dummy companies that have been created by some user just to test out things, right? Those might not be the real records. So find all accounts where number of employees are not null. How do we check that? Let's go to developer console. Let me close all of these tabs. These queries will be simple, but yeah, we have built the foundation. That's why they will be simple now. So all accounts where number of employees. So let's say select ID, name, number of employees from account where, what is the field they want to compare? Number of employees are not null. So number of employees not equal to null. As simple as that. That's what you want to put. So you see, these are all the records that are showing up and they have a number of employees value. If I get rid of this filter, I'll see all the other records showing up also that do not have a number of employees value. So you see these guys right here. All right. So I'll just say number of employees not equal to null. So I only see these records that have a value. So not null leaves away all the blank values, all the empty values. So that's where you would use it in the first use case. Second use case, find all contacts where parent account does not exist. Now parent account, if you know, contact and account, the contact is a child and account is a parent. So we have a field that's called the account ID, right? So if I want to query all accounts, I will just say contact. If I want to query all contacts where parent account does not exist, which means I can say that the account ID is null, right? So I'll just say where account ID equals null, which means these are all the contacts which do not have a parent. Now there's none of them which do not have a parent. So if I say not equal to null, I should see all the contacts coming up. See, all the 23 contacts are showing up, which means they have an account ID value in all the records. All right, if I get rid of this value and I say save rows, Siddhartha Nederk, right? If I say now equal to null, this record should show up. Siddhartha record is showing up. So only this contact does not have a parent account ID using the equal to null check. Cool. What's the next use case? Find all cases where case origin is not specified, right? So this could be a blunder from the team that is working on the case. So if I just say case origin from case where case is equal to null. Oh, sorry, case origin is equal to null, not case equal to null. I should see all the records. This says ID comma name, no name. Okay, case does not have a name field. I'll get rid of it and I'll say execute. It says case origin is also not there. So now I have to go and I'll have to open case object. Let's see if there's an origin field or not. We'll use the API name. So case origin is just basically origin. It is not case origin. So I'll just remove the case keyword from here and also remove it from here. Let's click on execute and this shows no records, which means all of them have a origin value. If I were to say not equal to null, I should see all the cases with the origin value, which is either phone, web, or probably email. Yeah. So all of them have a value. All right. Last one, find all leads where lead source is specified. Is specified means not a specific value, but yeah, it is there. There's some values there. So you can say not null, right? That's why you would use not null check. So lead source from lead object, and this should be lead source value. Execute, and these are all the records which have a lead source value, and you can see the lead source value. So it is specified, not a specific value, but it is specified. So you see the language, not specified, specified means not equal to null, equal to null. Does not exist means equal to null. And simply if it is written null, then you can just check with not null or equal to null, right? So these are different ways you'll see the language showing up, but you'll have to understand, okay, that's basically a null check that I have to do. All right, where is this null check handy? This null check is handy when you are processing bad data. You're processing a lot of data which has some data that is not needed for your transaction. In those cases, you can eliminate those by using not null checks, right? Let's say you're working on all the contacts whose birthdays are in the coming month. Now, what if there are contact records that don't have a birth date field mentioned? Why do you want to process those records, right? So you'll only query contacts where birth date is next month and they are not equal to null. All right, so that not null check helps you in basically filtering out bad data. Cool. All right, the next thing is using Boolean flags. Now I'm trying to segregate individual items as individual topics, and we are using use cases and examples so that you understand, okay, this is how I would use a checkbox, this is how I would use a null check, and so on and so forth. Okay, I hope the curriculum is making sense as of now, and it's helping you understand and establish everything that you want to about SOQL or SOQL. Cool. Boolean flags. What are Boolean flags? Checkboxes, true or false, yes or no, right? So the question one is find accounts who do not want any emails or fax sent to them. Let's go to account and let's see what are those fields that kind of govern this. If I go to object, if I go to account, so you see here there's something that's called, there are some fields that are called opt-in, I believe. I don't see them here. Let's take a look at the contact object. Maybe it might be on the contact object. I don't see them here as well. Let's go to a record and let's see. So I believe there was some object that had the opt-in values. Let's see. S-force details, it is not here. Opportunities, let's check in opportunities. There's one checkbox here which is create task. Let's go to contacts. Nope, not here. All right, maybe I'm missing something. Let's use this field right here, the create task field on the opportunity object, the create task field. All right, so let's say our use case is that find all the opportunities who do not have the create task checkbox checked. All right, this is what we want to find. I'll get rid of this use case. We'll just take a look at this use case because I do not see the values. So create task is a checkbox. It's a checkbox field. You can either check it or uncheck it, which is basically yes or no or true or false, right? So those are called Boolean flags. So find all opportunities which do not have the checkbox checked, which means wherever the value is unchecked, I want to show all those opportunities. So let's go ahead and figure out. First of all, let's see all the. Before writing this field, let me just query only ID and name from opportunities. Execute. All right, I want to also query the create task field. So since it's a custom field, I do not know or remember the name, so I'll just copy it from this particular section right here. So create task should be a custom field, this field right here. I'll just say create task. What is the value? Let's see in all the opportunity records. It's some have true and some have false, and total there are 32 records. Now we only want to query all the opportunities which do not have the field as checked. So in order to do that, we use the where clause, we use the field, and we can either use one of the values equal to true or false. True means checked, false means unchecked. So in this case it should be false because we want to see who do not have the value checked, which means they have unchecked value. Just another way of saying it. Execute. So this gives me 29 records which have all the values false. If I say equal to true, I'll see only those three opportunities that have the value true, which means they are checked. All right, so this is how you'll check Boolean flags in your SOQL. All right, so a good chunk of stuff is done on SOQL. I hope you are following, and I hope you are taking some breaks in between and understanding things calmly and patiently. And I hope you are doing stuff with me so that it builds in confidence in you when you are writing your SOQL query in actual real-time scenarios. Moving forward, we are working with relationships. The next few slides or few keynote PPT sessions would be on relationships. Again, it will be straightforward, nothing to worry, but yeah, we'll try to cover relationships. One thing we covered just a while ago was here. Find all contacts whose parent account does not exist. So what did I do? I fetched the account ID because that was a field on the account on the contact object. But what if I wanted to fetch fields from the parent account object itself? What if I wanted to see the name field, the revenue field, the type field on the contact query? Or I was on the account query and I wanted to see all the contact records, all my children. How do I do that? That is what we'll take a look. Now there are two directions things can go in terms of relationships, right? Parent to child, account to contact, right? Account to opportunity, account to cases, contact to cases, contact to tasks. So parent to child. And the other one is child to parent. So contact to parent, opportunity to parent, lead to account. So from child level to parent level or parent level to child level. There are different ways how you write your query, how you call your fields basically. First, we'll take a look at querying parent fields from your child object. Now, since query parent fields is mentioned, which means you'll be writing the query on the child level. Okay. Take your time, understand this carefully. Once you understand it, problem solved. No issues for lifetime. So parent fields, we want to query on the child level. So query all contacts with their parent account name where billing city is San Carlos. All right. Let's first of all check all the contact records which have the billing city as San Carlos. Are there any records, or we'll just change our use case? Select ID, comma, billing city from contact. I just want to see all the billing city values. There is no billing city field on contact. So is there any shipping city? There's no shipping city. Let's see the contact object. Do we have any kind of address fields available? So here we have mailing city. All right, so let's use mailing city. So select ID comma mailing city from contact. So mailing city is San Francisco, Burlington, Paris, Lawrence. Let's use Lawrence as the value. All right, so select ID comma mailing city from contact where mailing city equals Lawrence. Why did I put single quotes? Because I'm comparing a text literal, and the habit of keeping all these things capital will be a good habit, comma with a space. All right, so now the query looks very neat. All right, execute. I get only one record. Now if I just try to see what is the account associated with this record, I can just say account ID, because this is the relationship field. Execute. So I see this ID and I can go to this ID and I can open this ID right here. But what if I don't want to do that? I want to see the values on my query itself. I want to see what is the name of the account. I want to see what is the type of the account. I want to see what is the website of the account, all from my query, right? How do I do that? Instead of writing account ID here, I can use the dot operator. So I'll say account dot name. Now, as soon as you write the dot operator, you open up your SOQL query to querying any field from the parent. So it is basically parent dot parent field name, website. It is parent dot parent field name type. And you can also have your normal contact fields. So mailing city is the contact field, birth date is the contact field. So you can have this information. And now if I say execute, I see the account ID showing up, the name of the account, which is Dickinson Pixie Place. And then you have, okay, I just have to refresh it again. This is the website, this is the type, and this is the mailing city. There's no birth date for this contact, which is on the contact level, but see how you are able to fetch parent information using the dot operator. So every time you get to query parent from child, use the dot operator. All right. Let's say I wanted to query opportunity. All right. And here I want to query all the opportunity values, and I want to query the parent field. So I can do the same thing here. See, the account information query can be queried on the opportunity query by using a dot operator, because account is the parent, opportunity is the child, and there is a relationship between them. How do you certify this? If you do not know, let's go to opportunity object. Let's certify that. If I go to opportunity, I will see there should be one relationship field. What is that relationship field? There is a reference field, which is account ID. See, this is your reference, and this reference is done to the account object, the parent object. All right. So that's how you query parent fields on child level. What if you wanted to use a filter on the parent? So you can do that also, where account dot name starts with B. You can do this. Execute. See, Burlington Textiles of America is showing up for this particular opportunity, because the account name starts with B. This is the only opportunity that is coming up, this opportunity right here. All right. So you can even use your fields as where clause filters. No problem with that. All right. What is the next thing we want to check? The next thing we want to check is how do you query child fields? Now you are standing on the parent level and you want to figure out all the child records, which is more like select ID comma name from account. Now along with this query, I want to see all my contacts, all the child contacts associated with each record, each account record. So one parent might have multiple children, right? So you have to use something that's called an inner query. So query all accounts along with all their contacts where account SIC code is 1452. So SIC code is a field. Let's see, SIC code. Is that a field? No, I think it should be SIC. Execute. So this is the SIC, right? Is there a value 1452? No. Let me add 1452 for some of them. So these are the 3 records that I want to query, and I want to see all the contacts associated with these records. All right. So I'll say where SIC is equal to 1452 first. I'll put that filter. So only 3 records will show up. But now I want to see all the contacts associated with these 3 records. How do I do that? I cannot use contact dot because there might be multiple records, right? So in order to fetch contacts or fetch children in your parent level, you have to use inner query. Basically you fetch all the information here using another select command. Select from contact. Now what are the fields that you want to fetch? I'll just say ID comma first name. And if I say execute, now you see it tells me that did not understand relationship contact in from part of the query call. So there's some issue with the relationship. Now contact is the object name. I agree, even you agree. But when you are calling a child from a parent context, a parent might have multiple children, right? Which is why you have to use the child relationship name, which is contacts. I will say execute. Now you see, you get contacts and you see all the records, ID and first name in the contacts list. And this is now part of your query on the account level. Right? So that is how you would query all your child information on the parent object level. Okay. Query all accounts along with all their locations where account annual revenue is more than 50K. Let me see if there's a custom object that I can show you. I might not have this available. Let's see. Open. There is a custom object, but that's a standard object, right? So the only difference that comes up with this custom object is that you have to use the relationship, and that would look something like this. So if I say ID comma name from account where SIC is equal to 1452, what I would want to do is I would want to write an inner query, obviously, and here ID comma name from object. Now this is a custom object, right? If it was a standard object, if it were a standard object, it would be contacts, it would be cases, it would be opportunities, right? But if it is a custom object, let's say it's a custom object which looks like this, you have to use __ r here because you're trying to query the relationship between them. So it will look like something. It will not be __ c, but it will be __ r. All right, so that's how you would query a custom object using the relationship name. So the relationship name would look like, let's say the object name is location __ c. The relationship name could look like locations __ r. That would be the relationship name. Again, the easy way to check it is in the related list, or you can go to Workbench and you can find the relationship layout. Not the relationship layout, you can check the relationship under standard versus custom objects metadata. Alright, the only difference that will come up is you won't have anything like this on a standard object, but you would have an __ r. R stands for relationship when you are querying custom objects, which is the child of a standard object. Alright, so that is how you would work on querying parent fields and querying child fields. Make sense? Cool. Let's take a look at our next section, which is date specific queries. We took a look at Boolean flags, we took a look at null checks. Now we'll take a look at date specific queries. What if you had to figure out, information from the current month, past month, or a specific date, right? From today to 7th of November, or from 15th of November to the 31st of December. How would you check that? So date specific queries can also be written. The first question is find all cases which have been created in the current month. Now the last thing we discussed about a date parameter was the today function, right? That gave you the information about today's date automatically using a formula today, right? Similarly, we have something called current month, last month. We have different operators or functions available. In this question, we want to find all cases which have been created in the current month. So what I do is I'll say select ID comma origin comma due date from case where what is it what I want to check? Created in the current month. So there's something that's called a created date in the current month. Now how do I write current month? I write it like this. This is a keyword I get. If I say execute, it says due date is not available. I'll get rid of this. I'll say execute. So you see, currently there's no record because there's no record that has been created in the current month. Okay. What if I wanted to check in the past month? Okay. So I can just say this month -1. If I say execute, this is unknown error parsing query, which means -1 cannot be done. You have to say last month. Does it work? It says there are no records. What about accounts which have been created in the last month? Let's see. Execute. So there's one record, right? What about this month? I can just type this month. So there's no record, no account record created in this month. What about accounts that have been modified in the current month? So there might be many, so I'll just use that field. So last modified date equal to this month. So you see, these are the 4 records. Which are the ones I can query the name out of it? So you see, sample account, S4, Salesforce Makes Sense, and Jackson Controls. These are the 4 records that have been modified in the current month. Cool. So you can use this parameter this month. So similarly, you have different parameters for this week, last week, this quarter, this financial quarter, this calendar year. So there are a lot of parameters. I'll let you explore all of that. It is all available in the documentation from Salesforce, and based on what your requirement is, you can use that one of the attributes. Okay. The actual implementation, or the actual thing I wanted to show you with date specific queries, is how do you configure writing actual dates. So find all tasks which have been created between 7th October and 15th November. Now that is a real deal, which means you have to figure out writing a date. So if I just try to type in this, I don't think there's a name. So ID comma due date from task, even due date is not there. Let's see ID from task. These are all the task records. Right? Do we have a subject? Right. So we have a subject. All right. And can I also check? Let's leave it here. I'll not check that now. I'll show you first. So find all tasks which have been created between 7th October 2022, obviously, and 15th November. All right. So how do I do that? I have to put a where clause. And what is the field? Created date. Again, because created. Will equal to work? No, because I want to check the between option, which means I have to say it should be greater than equal to 7th October and less than equal to 15th October. So I can say created date is greater than equal to 7th October and created date is less than equal to 15th November. Now, can we write it like this? Let's see, execute. It says unknown error parsing query, which means I have to figure out a way to give it the correct date. So there's a specific format to write it, and that format is YYYYMMDD. All right. How do I write it now? I would say 2022-10-15. So that is 15th October. Oh, it should be 7th October, right? So I'll say 7. And then I'll say less than equal to 2022-11-15. So this is 15th November. Now if I say execute, you see this runs, but it is giving me some error that created date must be of type date time and should not be enclosed in quotes. So I have not enclosed it in quotes, which is fine. It is basically asking me to give a timestamp also. Now that this is what I wanted to show you. Let me just get rid of this where clause now. And let me query the created date and show you what this field is. What this field looks like. Created date. Now, if you notice, the created date is a date time field which has two components. One is the date component and then followed by the time component. So when we are trying to figure out this where clause right here, we are just giving the date component to it, not the time component. Okay. If it were a date field, this would work. But for date time fields, you have to ensure that you give this component also. So how do you do that? You can just copy this syntax and you can just put hours, minutes and seconds as 0 for the timestamp. And then it should work. Let's say execute. It says error. I think we have to follow the entire format. So if I follow the entire format, this should work fine. Let's say execute. Now it is showing me all the records, right? So I have to take into consideration the exact format. And since this was a date time field, created date is a date time field, how do we certify that? Let's go to file, open objects. What is the object we are looking at? Task. So I'll just go to task and here I should see created date somewhere, see created date, and it is a date time field. Do we have a date field? If I wanted to show you, activity date is a field, right? So let me go ahead and check activity date, and you will see activity date has just the date component. And if you were to check on activity date, you would not have to do any kind of nonsense on the time level because you're only working on the date field. So you could simply say this value and your created date would be modified to activity date. And now any record which has the activity date between 7th of October to 15th of November would show up here. And let's certify that. Execute and you see 13th, that is more than 7th. This is more than 7th, and less than 15. All right. So this is how you can write it. I hope you understood. If it were a date time, you would have to add the time component followed by T, hours, minutes, seconds, followed by millisecond timestamp, and then that should be good, right? But if you were to write just a date element, you could simply go with YYYY MMDD format with hyphens in between. All right, so this is how you can deal with date queries and specific dates in particular. All right, now let's take a look at something interesting. What is the escape character in SOQL? Right, now what are escape characters? Escape characters are basically used to tackle any special characters that are present and that might break the SOQL or that might create an issue. Now you saw me, right? If I were to check that, show me all the accounts where industry is apparel. This is the query I would write if I had to check this, where industry is apparel, and I get one record, right? This is the industry apparel. Execute. But what if the industry had something like this? This was the industry. The industry field value has APP apostrophe or a single quote followed by AREL. If I execute this now or refresh my grid, it does not give me the result, right? And I want to check APP single quote AREL because this is my value now, right? If I click on execute, it says unknown error parsing query. Why? Because I have single quote here and a quote that ends here, but because the value contains single quote, my quote is ending here and this is creating a conflicting query for Salesforce. How do I escape this particular apostrophe? Which is why you need a escape character, and in Salesforce or for SOQL, you have backslash as the escape character. So for any such special characters, if you want to mention this right here, you have to put a backslash before it and then mention it. And now if you see, magically enough, if I execute, I'll get my record, which is APP apostrophe AREL. So it does not take it into consideration that it is a single quote. It gives it basically not the single quote that it is looking here, but it treats it as a character in the part of the string. Right? So any kind of special characters that might be reserved or that might create a problem in the query can be escaped by using a reserved character, and that escape character is called backslash. Right? For one more example, let's say I want to figure out ID comma name from contact where name like or name equal to Jane Gray. Right? Let's execute this. I see 2 Jane Gray records, right? Now what if one of them has something like this? I have to break this down because that becomes a compound field. I'll say first name, and now if I want to edit it, I'll say double quotes, right? Save. If I have to put this into picture, I have to put a double quote here and I have to escape it like this and say execute, and it will still give me the result. Okay, so any kind of special characters that you want escaped and want to be considered as part of the string, you have to use the backslash character, which is the escape character in SOQL. All right, so these were the examples I showed you, like single apostrophe example was there. So you can figure out any special character can be escaped if you want to escape it using the backslash character. All right, reserved characters. Now backslash and single quotes are the two characters which are reserved by Salesforce. So if you want to escape them, you have to use the escape character, which is backslash again, right? What if, let's take one more example. What if Jane is like this, JA backslash NE, save rows, right? So in order for us to escape backslash, I have to put one more backslash and I'll have to say execute. That's when I'll get this record. Okay, what if I put something like this? Let's see if it works or not. It does not. Right, because the backslash is not working. It is a reserved character. So you have to put a backslash in order to tell them that, you know, backslash is another character in my string that has to be escaped. So you have to use the reserved keyword backslash. And the same is with quotes. Like we saw, the quote has to be backslashed. All right. So these are the two keywords or two characters that are reserved in SOQL, and you cannot use them directly. Now you might be missing SQL at some point in time. I'll tell you why in the next slide, but actually you should not. Now there might be a question in your mind that, you know, SQL was so good, we could simply say select star, right? We could simply say select star and everything would come to us. But if I say execute here, it says unknown error because Salesforce does not let you do that. It does not let you query all the fields because it's a multi-tenant architecture. It does not let you query and fetch everything that you want. It basically wants you to query exactly what you want, right? You do not have provisions using the star operator, but in case sometimes it's necessary that you want all the fields, right? So in that case, you have three options. Either you can query all the fields for a specific object, or you want to query all the standard fields, right? Or you only want to query all the custom fields along with the ID field of the opportunity object, right? So these are the 3 questions we will be taking a look at next, and these can be taken care of even without SQL through our SOQL, right? How do you do that? You use the fields function. If I just type in fields from contact and say execute, let me just say execute here. I have to mention all maybe. So the SOQL fields must have a limit of at most 200. So I'll just say limit 50. Execute. So you see, this is returning all the field values and everything has come up. You see, this is the first name, last name, other, assistant, all the values, but 50 records. So why limit came in? Because see, it gave me an error because it's a multi-tenant architecture. I can only query at most 200 records. So I queried 50 of them and I saw the 50 records. Okay, even though you might have 70 records, you have to put a limit which is less than 200. So if I say 50, or let's say if I say 1 and say execute, only 1 record shows up with all the fields. This is all fields. Now the second use case. Before going to the second use case, see, pretty cool, right? Because you are getting all the fields. Instead of star, you have this option, but you can only use it for at max 200 records. It's not very much open to everyone. Okay, what about only standard fields? Instead of all, you would simply say standard, and that would query only the standard fields. So you see, the spacing has reduced, which means the number of fields that are on the screen are less. Now custom, what about custom? You can simply say custom inside this box and you can execute, and you see only 2 fields are custom, so you are seeing only 2 field values. Okay, what if I get rid of this limit? It will give me the error that the limit has to be put. Even if the custom fields are 2 or 20 or 200, you have to put a limit which should be less than 200. So the number of records you can at max get from the fields function inside your select clause is 200. All right, and exciting or a challenging interview question. Now another option is, what if you wanted to do a mix of both custom fields and you also want ID? So you can simply say comma ID, execute. That should not be a problem. But what if you say standard here and then you say comma ID and say execute? This will say duplicate field selected. Why? ID is a standard field and you have already queried all the standard fields. So you can get rid of this part and you can say execute. What if you wanted one custom field and all standard? You can even do that. So I'll just get custom field and I'll say execute. So the last field would be level. Somewhere there it should be there. It is here, level. Okay, I'm not able to see it even, so many fields. Cool. So that was about not missing SQL really, and SOQL has really everything that you need. All right, let's understand some limits. Now we are in a multi-tenant architecture, right? And we have always been fancied by having all the resources to ourselves, but it is not always the case. Salesforce is on a multi-tenant architecture and you have to be very cautious while using the resources because there are a lot of limit exceptions that can come. For example, every transaction can only have 100 SOQL queries max. This is for a synchronous Apex, which means you cannot run more than 100 SOQL queries per transaction. That gives you a SOQL limit exception. All right, and every SOQL query, the ones that we have been writing since the start of this course or this crash course, you can only get at max 50,000 records. What if there are 5 million records? You cannot query them. It will give you a SOQL record query exception, right? The query records limit will exceed and you'll get an error saying only 50,000 can be retrieved at once. For every query you get 50,000 and the total number of queries you get is 100. That's all. That's all you get. And you have to do your entire work, your entire business within that transaction. You cannot go beyond that. All right. Cool. So that brings me towards the end of the curriculum, and I hope I was able to make sense because Salesforce makes sense, and I hope I was able to deliver everything that you wanted to know about SOQL. We started off understanding what is SOQL, how is Salesforce powered by Oracle, why do we need SOQL, how the query structure looks like. We built standard and custom field queries using the developer console, and then we jumped into some simple use cases, right? We covered 5 simple use cases, and then we started looking into the operators: or operator, in operator, like operator, order by, limit, offset, count, group by, having, a lot of them. And then we understood how to use null for, avoiding some bad data and doing null checks and not null checks. Next, we took a look at checkboxes, true or false checks, Boolean checks. Next, we took a look at parent to child relationships and child to parent relationships, and how we can query both of them using single queries, right? If we are querying a child record and we want parent information, we go for a dot operator. And if we are on the child level and if we are on the parent level and we want child information, we use the inner query option, right? Then we queried parent fields, and then we queried child fields. Then we went into date specific queries. If you want to put date time, you can go with the entire date time format. If you want to just go for date, you have to go for YYYY-MM-DD, right? Then we understood backslash is the escape character for SOQL, and it can be used whenever you want to use anything that's reserved. When we say reserved, if a string contains something like a single quote or a double quote or a question mark or a backslash itself, we can escape it by using the escape character, which is backslash. All right. And then we finally closed the SQL chapter, because we can query all the fields in SOQL also. We can query all the standard and custom fields, or a mix of both. All right, but here the limit is, the maximum limit should be 200 records. And lastly, we understood that there are governor limits. We cannot have everything for granted. We can just have 100 queries in synchronous Apex, and it is 200 for asynchronous. But synchronous Apex, you have just 100 SOQL queries per transaction, and every SOQL query you can only get or retrieve maximum 50,000 records. All right, so that covers the entire curriculum, and that is pretty much the crash course on SOQL. It's quiz time. Let's see what you learned. So the first question is, which function would you use if there are multiple values you want to check in a single field? Would you use the AND operator, the OR operator, the IN operator, or the null operator? I hope you have your answer ready. The correct answer is option C, right? So the correct option is option C. Let me just format this. Right? So C is the correct answer, because if there's a single field and you want to check multiple values, you can use the OR operator, but the ideal way to use it would be the IN operator, and you could just put comma separated values within single quotes. All right. Next question. Which function or what function would you use to fetch records created in the previous week? So we saw something on the current month, right? This month. Similarly, what do you think would be the function that you could use to fetch records created in the previous week? Is it last space week, previous space week, previous underscore week, or last underscore week? Let's take a look at the correct answer. The correct answer is last underscore week. D, option D is the correct answer. All right, last underscore week will give you records from the previous week. All right, third question. What is the maximum number of records you can fetch through a SOQL query? Is it 5,000, 500, 50,000, or 5 million? I think we just covered this, and the answer is 50,000, right? Maximum number of records would be 50,000. Be it synchronous or asynchronous, you can only have 50,000 records at max. Let's look at the fourth question. The fourth question asks you, what function would you use if you wanted to check if a name starts and ends with a specific character? So it has to start with a specific character and end with a specific character. In between, it can have any number of characters or anything in between. What would be the function? Would it be substring, or like, or offset? I think you already know the answer. The answer is like, right? So like, you can start a character, you can put a modulo sign or a percentage sign in between, and you can end it with a character. All right. The final question, if you have to query a parent field in a child SOQL, which operator is needed? So you want to query the parent. Always, whenever parent child comes, always align yourself with account contact. So you are wanting to write a child SOQL. You want to write a contact SOQL. You want to query a parent field. You want to contact the account name field. What would you use? A dot, a asterisk, an ampersand, or a modulo? So the answer is a dot operator, right? Account dot name would be needed. Cool. So those were the 5 questions I had as part of the quiz. And lastly, if you would want to write or do some practice assignments, do drop your comments, or do let me know. Do ping me on LinkedIn, YouTube as a comment. You can mail me on salesforcemakes@gmail.com. Go ahead and ask me about some practice assignments, and I'll share them with you. And that's all from this particular explained course, a crash course on SOQL, and I hope it was helpful. And I hope here onwards you will be able to write amazing SOQL, no issues with any limitations, filters, any bad data entering, and writing SOQL with the best practices, right? Cool. That's all from today's video, from this video right here. I'll see you in the next one. Till then, keep learning. Bye.